Hello and welcome. Today's lesson is about how to complement a dominant chord in a few different ways. Briefly, I'm going to sum that up, but mainly in this particularly unusual way, particularly flavoursome way, using a scale known as Lydian Dominant. But first I'm going to talk a little bit about the dominant chord, what it's made up out of, and its function generally in key and in different types of music. So a dominant 7 chord is basically a major chord with a flattened 7th in it. So it's not really built from a major scale, it's built from the 5th mode of the major scale. The chord itself would be root, major 3rd, 5th, and a dominant 7th. And in guitar voicings, these are almost always rearranged. So typical guitar voicings, the one that we have up here, would go root, 5th, dominant 7th, major 3rd, 5th again, and a root again. So it's only really got the 4 notes, even though we're strumming through 6. It's typically the chord in key that wants to resolve to chord 1. It's a chord that leans in. So you would expect this chord to resolve to a D major chord. So we're basically in the key of D. As stated before, it's a D major scale, started from a different point, and so it means that it's going to pop out slightly differently from your major scale. You would expect when you're playing through a major scale, you have this major 7th, 1, major 2nd, major 3rd, 4th, 5th, major 6th, and you would expect a major 7th. But over that dominant chord, we need to put that dominant 7th in because it's in the chord. So the actual scale, our Mixolydian scale, dominant scale, it goes root, major 2nd, major 3rd, perfect 4th, perfect 5th, major 6th, dominant 7th, and then the root. And in this shape here, we've got it repeating over 2 octaves, so it just does exactly the same thing again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, dominant 7th, and then the root again. So you end up with this sort of sound. And it perfectly complements that chord. You can just waffle to your heart's content within that sort of framework. So Mixolydian scale. So it just works. You can waffle away. Phrasing doesn't matter too much. Obviously you want to try and have good phrasing, but it just harmonizes. Now typically guitarists won't actually play Mixolydian over that dominant chord that much. What they'll tend to do is, blues is strange because blues is out of key with itself effectively. What you have is a 1-4-5 chord progression. What I mean by that is it's based on the 1st, the 4th and the 5th degree of the scale. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So you've got a chord based on this, you've got a chord based on this, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You've got a chord based on that note too. So you end up with your 1, and then another dominant chord, and then your 5, and then back to the 1. Now none of those are really in key with each other. There's only really ever one dominant chord and a diatonic series of chords. So what guitarists will generally do is they'll compromise with this a minor pentatonic scale, which will usually they'll play around with the 3rd basically, because the minor pentatonic scale has a minor 3rd in it, and you play it over a chord that has a major 3rd. So the dominant 7th chord has this major 3rd, but our minor pentatonic scale, root, minor 3rd, 4th, 5th, dominant 7th, root, and then it would repeat again, minor 3rd. Now against the chord, we would play that note in a minor pentatonic scale. So played together, there's a real clash. And obviously it's not very musical, but what we tend to do is over that chord, it'll get bent slightly sharp and the third becomes ambiguous. So typically, guitarists will play minor pentatonic like this. Okay, so it works. It's something that we're used to. It's something that we're used to hearing through years and years of blues music. Technically, it's wrong, but it works. Another way that you could complement that chord is by playing a minor pentatonic scale 3 frets down from the root of the chord. So your root's here, and if you go down 3 frets, 1, 2, 3, you play the minor pentatonic there, and what happens is the third of this minor pentatonic is the root of the major chord. The fifth of the minor pentatonic is the third of the major chord that you're playing against. The seventh of that minor pentatonic scale is actually the fifth of the chord. You also have the root of that minor pentatonic scale is the sixth of the chord, so it's kind of outside the chord, and then you actually have the third as the root. So it's kind of hitting all the sweet spots. It'll sound more major. It sounds, especially when you use bends in typical places within a pentatonic scale, it starts to sound country-ish, or more kind of rockabilly or something like that. So, F minor pentatonic scale over an A7. So you see, it's a different flavour against that chord, and it's particularly handy because you're just using the same shape. You're using exactly the same shape that you used on the 5th fret, but you're using it on the 2nd fret. Now these are all kind of typical things that we'll reach for as guitarists, but if you want to add a really particularly different flavour over that dominant chord, then a good suggestion is this Lydian Dominant Scale. Lydian Dominant, you would call it a Lydian Dominant mode really, because it's a mode of melodic minor. In the case of A Lydian Dominant, it's a mode of E melodic minor. We'll come to E melodic minor in a minute, but basically this is just one note different from your Mixolydian scale. The A Lydian Dominant is a Mixolydian scale, and there's 2 ways you can see it really. It's a Mixolydian scale with a sharpened 4th. So if we look closely at these 2 shapes, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And generally the rest of the shape looks the same. The reason it looks different up the top there is because we have 1, we're back onto an octave, 2, 3, there's the 4 there, rather than 1, 2, 3, 4. So they're really just a semitone apart. One's a sharpened version of the other. And it sounds quite a bit different, even though there's only 1 note difference. So you've got root, major 2nd, major 3rd, sharpened 4th, this strange note that we're not used to, perfect 5th, flattened 6th, dominant 7th, and then your root again, and that repeats over the next octave. So root, major 2nd, major 3rd, our unusual note, our sharpened 4th, 5th, 6th, dominant 7th, and then back to the root again. So it's quite a strange sounding thing. And quite dissonant if you phrase it in that way. It might sound kind of familiar if you're a Queens of the Stone Age fan, because this is, if you've seen a program called Guitar Moves, it's a Vice magazine program, you can find it on YouTube. Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age explains how he gets a lot of his sound in his soloing, and basically he's abusing a minor pentatonic scale to hit these sweet spots. So what he's doing is, he's taken an A minor pentatonic scale if he's playing over an A dominant chord, and he is shifting. Normally you would expect this, and he will shift the second line of that scale down a semitone, so. And then it goes back to normal, so it would be the flattened seventh and the root that you would expect in a minor pentatonic scale. So it goes. Those are two intervals that you expect there. And then he plays an octave of the one that he shifted. So basically the fourth line, he shifts up a semitone. So it's going normal stuff shifted down, where you would expect it. Normal stuff shifted up a semitone, then where you would expect it. And he just kind of plays around with this major and minor third up at the top. And you can hear that kind of Queens of the Stone Age solo sound in there. Whether he knows it or not, it's basically hinting at Lydian Dominant, or a Neapolitan major scale, which we'll come to later. It's similar but different. So this Lydian Dominant, basically, if we play that over this dominant chord, it will sound that Queens of the Stone Age way, where it's kind of like Eastern European polka kind of sound. It's a little bit odd, but it still kind of harmonizes. So here we go, Lydian Dominant over your dominant chord. So it has this particularly wonky, but still inside the chord in most ways. It's a really distinct flavour. It's a different way of soloing over something, and it allows you basically to mix up these flavours. So you can have your raunchy bits, you can have your country bits, you can just play through Mixolydian scale, and you can mess around with this Lydian Dominant thing, and even the pentatonic thing that I showed you relating to the Josh Homme thing. So here we go, just a big mixture of everything. And again, on and on and on. And like I said previously, it relates to E melodic minor. It's a mode of E melodic minor. So in the next lesson, I'm just going to show you how basically you can start building chords out of these scales, this melodic minor system, this Lydian dominant system, and they're all relative. And like you can build chords out of your modes for your major scale, you can build chords out of your modes for your melodic minor scale. So tune in next time for that.